Good morning, everybody. It is a Friday morning here in the beautiful Midwest, heading into Seed Co-working. Check out that space in Toledo, Ohio. Going to meet with Keith Instone, talk about a project that I've been working on for the past 2 months, kind of down over Northwest Ohio, Archbold, where the school is located, spreading out all over the place. So one of the things that I want to talk about today in this video vlog is going to be instructional design. I'm seeing a big need for instructional design. That's my background. Lots of instructional design job postings in and around Ohio constantly. I still have an alert for jobs for IDs that pay over 65K, and they're out there. And yes, you need experience. Yes, you need all these other things. But even myself, for some of the consulting work that I've done, now working with a large company trying to make some stuff happen in the corporate training space with some instructional design. You know, corporate training, some of that, in my mind, there's two versions, right? There's the CYA training, which is the stuff like the onboarding, the sexual harassment, the policy stuff, just like, hey, we've shown you this, we can prove that we've actually shown you, you've been trained. And then there's the stuff that's more like academics, where you're being trained, assessed, guided in your learning, directed in your learning, and that's the stuff that really excites me, and that's why I'm excited. Because now I'm able to do some of that in two worlds: one, academia teaching, and two, with some of the work outside with corporate training. So long story short, instructional design, this video I'm kind of using it to collect my thoughts, this vlog here. In no way am I going to say that I am the master of all things instructional design. I am the master of willing to try new things and fail miserably, but learn from it, right? That's the number one key with instructional design. We have to build in responses, feedback to failure. We have to know what an acceptable failure is. By that we mean, okay, when we're learning things, they're typically difficult, right? The analogy of riding a bike, use that all over the place, right? I know once I take the training wheels off, you're going to fall. I know, right? How many kids, you know, just you take the training wheels off and they just coast and it's all good from there, right? No, everybody falls. So as an instructional designer, your thinking is, okay, everybody's going to fall here. Everybody's going to struggle with this. Do we want them to fall, to struggle and fall on concrete? Or do we want them to struggle and fall on the grass? So instead of letting them drive their bike down the middle of the highway, which is probably not a good idea anyway, but the middle of your neighborhood subdivision road, maybe better in that first time when they're learning to put them on keep them on the sidewalk, where when they fall, grass on either side. Right? Back to staying with the bike metaphor, making sure that their shoes are tied, because kids running around no shoes on, they may not even realize that there is a danger there. One of the things that we have to do with instructional design is we need to protect people from making mistakes that they don't need to make, from a catastrophic mistake. Right? You could get seriously injured if your shoelace got tangled in the chain and everything and flipped over and had no control, couldn't get your foot down. So why on earth, before we even start to learn, let me check and take a look at you, see where you're at, do an assessment of where you're at, your understanding of what it means, what it takes to do this activity, because you don't know. That's the one thing with learning, right? You don't know what you don't know, and that's why initial assessment and great teachers are never going to go out of style. Never, ever, ever. You can't build true learning if you're not pre-assessing and don't have great teachers. Those two things there, I think, are fundamental for instructional design. Preparing for failure and not allowing catastrophic failures. The other thing that's crucial for learning is going to be actually defrosting your windows so you can see what's going on here. Oh my goodness. All this hot coffee and my hot talking is fogging it up, and can't have no accidents today because it's Friday, beautiful day. I don't mind this weather here, the sun will be out again, it's fine. We're supposed to get a boat ton of snow. Great, looking forward to being able to play in the snow and get some shoveling in. I really like to shovel. It's good exercise, especially in the winter when there's so many other things going on, and getting to the gym, which I've only, first day back was yesterday in like years, so here's to that. But back to the instructional design and the learning. One of the things with initial instructional designers, when you come out of school, you may or may not, you've been introduced to ADDIE and some of those things, which are nice. But again, that's, with corporate training, sometimes you may or may not have the resources to be able to do those things at the scale that they really need to be done. Or at the scope, not the scale, the scope, right, that they need to be done. I would argue sometimes it's better not to even do anything at all, or to do small pockets that you can afford to do the right way. I think that's one of the big things. It's better to do a small bit of something the right way than it is to do the large bit of everything kind of half-assed. What that boils down to, and where that translates into ID, is what's called chunking, right? Finding a chunk of information that we can package, assess, pre-assess, post-assess, train around that singular package. And yes, it's going to probably exist inside of a larger system. So we have to be conscious of that as a component inside of another system. But we can also think of this singular component as its own system, with its pre-assessment, with its instructional materials, with its activities, and with its post-assessment. And we break those lesson chunks down even further into smaller bits. But when we do that, that's when we really need to be aware of the cognitive load that we're putting on the learner. That's why when I work with instructional designers, or I'm training instructional designers, I prefer to have somebody with a graphic design background, someone who's been taught as a designer, because an instructional designer, the design process is the same, whether it's instructional design, graphic design, when all done, the right way, with thinking about the user empathy, brainstorming, rapid prototyping, testing, iterating, that whole design thinking model. I mean, that's in graphic design and in instructional design. I believe, based on my experience, those two processes are the same. So it's easier for me, I've found, to take a graphic designer who understands visuals and understands the hierarchy of information, also understands enough, at least when I teach it, about how the brain works with regards to processing information and the expectation of what someone's supposed to be able to do with this component inside of the larger system. So the instructional designers I prefer to work with are graphic designers who then have either been trained or that I have trained in instructional design. Because that's one of the biggest things that I find with working with open educational resources, with working with subject matter experts. A lot of everything is text heavy up front, and that's okay, right? Think about Bird Box, all right? Bird Box. I'm not going to close my eyes because I'm driving down the road here. But with Bird Box, or anything for that matter, it starts with a whole bunch of words. That book, 300 pages long, 300 words per page, 50,000 total words, whatever it is, right? That got turned into a 90-minute movie. Visuals. There's a process there of going through that written content and turning it into visuals. And if we already have people who think visually and are able to understand the hierarchy of information, how we can use visual identifiers to help sort and process or help the learner process information that we're presenting, beautiful thing, right? So that's one of the major foci when working on an initial iteration of course content, is presenting it in a chunked fashion with visual cues that help to let the learner and even the facilitator know what they need to know and know what they need to be able to do with that piece of information. There's two things here. One's a visual, You know, the visual indicators, whether it's a color or an icon to let you know what's what, whether something is a discussion activity or whether something is a essay type activity, right? Yes, you could have the word discussion. Yes, you could have the word essay, but that takes more energy to read that than it does to see a picture, an icon that indicates that. But then also naming conventions. That's another big piece of the puzzle, right? What we name things is important, because what we name things should, if we're thinking about our user, let our user know what they're supposed to be able to do with it, how they're supposed to use that information. So those are some of the big things that we'll be working on in some of the first iterations of what we're building here. I'm excited because the opportunity to work with graphic designers and visual communicators at school, and how that's translating into some of the work that we're able to do with instructional design, learning experience design, what I prefer to call it, but it still goes by ID all over the place. I think that's a real strength for us, especially in Northwest Ohio, because Northwest Ohio, whether we like it or not, our strengths are also where our challenges lie. Our strengths in ag, manufacturing, being creative problem solvers, that's what we're known for. I would argue that we also should start to be known for being able to reskill people, because it is a need, I think, that is going to affect our region. I mean, equal to many other regions, if not more than most regions. So that's what we're working on today. It's a beautiful Friday in Northwest Ohio, and let's get it on.